Welcome everybody to our talk today. I'm really excited about this talk, something I've been wanting to do for a while. And my name's Tammy from Women of Inspiration. It's a platform I created for support for women and just the different roles that we live out in our everyday lives. And obviously one of those roles is as parents. And so I'm really, really excited to bring this topic today on conscious parenting. And I've got Isolet with me, Isolet Jansen, and she's in Cape Town. I'm in Abu Dhabi, so we thank the Lord for technology that can connect us across the waters. So, yeah, Isolet, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do before we start.
Thank you, Tammy. So I work in family mediation and family services. And what that means is we serve our community going through times of conflict, whether it is within a family dynamic, a divorce setting, and then also where there is a conflict in the core family, parents and children, whether it is children that are still school going or adults with their adult children, where something's happened or events where they're unable to resolve the conflict themselves. And from that came this very important part of what we do, which is our parenting services.
And obviously you're a parent yourself, right?
I am a parent. I have three teenagers, or as I sometimes refer to them, mean-agers at home. And yes, they keep us on our toes. They keep us fresh, sometimes depleted of resources, but it is a very rich experience. And I found parenthood, it didn't come to me as naturally as I think a lot of people experience it. And I've really grown into being a parent, and I've really grown into fully loving the experience, and especially loving the experience of being a parent to teens. It is a crazy world that they grow up in. It is a world we don't really understand and that we never experienced ourselves. The world has changed so drastically, and what our children are confronted with on a daily basis is sometimes scary, but it is also beautiful how they make a space for themselves and find themselves, their own identities and their own personalities in this space.
And so we actually as parents have to also adapt to this new world that we're living in, and the world that they're living in that wasn't part of our frame of reference, when we were growing up. So I think it's so important to actually understand their world, and where they're at. And I want to come back to just the adult parenting. So my kids are all adults, and sometimes that's also a challenge. And I was actually just thinking, before this talk yesterday, I was just sort of pondering, and I was thinking about somebody that came to me already, his 60s already, all the kids are adults, they've got grandkids, and just conflict with the children. And, obviously it's linked to where parenting wasn't great, and the children have sort of now developed in that environment. And now as adults, there's issues and there's stuff that hasn't been dealt with and stuff that hasn't been sorted out. And now at this point in their life, they're now, what do we do? So it really does start at the beginning, when they're very little. If only we had, I always say, if only kids came with manuals, because for me, parenting didn't come very naturally either. It was something that I had to also grow into. And so, like, if we could just get a manual to navigate those first years and to do the right things and to put the right foundations in place, it would be really awesome, but we don't. But what is awesome is we can have talks like this, and we can bring information to new parents or parents still with littlies, that can use this to help them, in their parenting.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe you can start there and we can get into it. Yeah.
I think the wonderful thing is it's never too late. I'm a firm believer that it's never too late. And Matthias Barker has said this really, really beautiful thing where he said, "You are a good parent with layers of traumatic experiences that need to be healed."
Yeah.
And that really encompasses the whole concept of conscious parenting. And what we call it is parenting from the heart. And it is understanding that for us to be a good parent, it is, first of all, we need to have grace for ourselves. We need to have forgiveness for ourselves and know that there are going to be days that we fail, but it's okay. And we need to have grace for ourselves and forgiveness for ourselves enough so that we can then try again tomorrow. But the core of parenting, really, and when I did my morning mindfulness exercise this morning, I was just reminded again that it begins with the healing we have to do ourselves. Because if we don't understand where we are hurt and where our past experiences and past traumas have hindered us and tripped us, we aren't going to be able to be a fully present and a whole parent to give the best versions of ourselves for children. And we so often see children coming to our practice. Parents send children, fix my child. Here's my child, fix my child. And how often do we see children where we actually need to see the parents? And it's understandable. It's a scary process. It is so scary to have to look into yourself, to have to look at those wounds. We close them up and we don't want to go there. We don't want to look at the parts of ourselves that's not pretty and hurt. But for us to be present in our parenting, we need to understand what our triggers are. And to understand what our triggers are, we need to go to those wounds. We need to find healing for the things that happen in our past so that we can give our children a better future. And that is one of the first exercises that I give parents when they go away, is to take a sheet and we write triggers and behavior, and they have to review every day. Take 10-15 minutes at the end of each day and recognize big emotions they had that day. And what was the trigger for that emotion? Because it happened so quickly. I'm someone with a quick temper. And I had to really sit and look at this because, the way my children looked at me when my temper flared up, it was that frightening look my children had to me. And I realized when I saw that, especially in my younger son's eyes, I realized I'm doing wrong here. I'm doing harm. And I had to go and understand and look at what is it in me that is flaring up, that has this temper. Because it's so easy for us to say, oh, but my child, this is a wild one.
Yeah.
But how can you expect a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old to be anything but themselves and to just be natural and, and have big emotions? And if I'm triggered by that, it means I need to work on myself.
Mm.
And I think that is very much where my journey with conscious parenting started, was
Mm.
to understand what is it that triggers this temper of mine,
Mm.
uh, and then what can I do when that happens.
And then to
I
be
think that's
open to the change, hey.
absolutely, absolutely. I think I shared with you once I realized, especially with my temper, that we now have an understanding. If I'm depleted at the end of the day and I am triggered, that I say to my children, I now need space. And we've learned by respecting each other's boundaries, which is also something we'll talk about, is that I then need a moment to gather myself so that we can then have a conversation
Mm.
where we don't say hurtful things to each other.
So I have my own little story there as well, and it was a very big eye opener for me. My daughter was probably around 15 or 16, around about there. And it was when I was busy studying as well, and my husband worked abroad. So I had the house to run. I had, I was studying full time. So I was all the time, it was study, study. I had to run her up and down to activities, to college, to, whatever she was doing at the time. And my mom was staying with us as well at the time. So the house was just, and I think for me, also at a point where I probably hadn't fully dealt with all my stuff. I was carrying all these burdens, probably not giving enough of them to the Lord to help me carry. And it was just a very busy, busy stage in our life. And so I would be depleted, and I would be probably walking around like a storm cloud in the house, but not actually realizing, that I was creating this atmosphere in the home. And so the one day I went into my daughter's room because she'd kind of been avoiding me. And I walked into her room, and I remember her boyfriend was still sitting with her on the bed, and they were spending some time together. And I said, "What's going on? Like, what's wrong? Why are you being this way toward me?" And the boyfriend pops up and he says, "If you don't tell your mom, I will." And I'm like, okay, what's going on now? So she says, "Mommy, it's you." And I was like, "What do you mean it's me?" She says, "You are so angry all the time.
Yeah,
And you make it very unpleasant for us to be here." And I
yeah,
was like, oh my goodness. And it was like, suddenly it's like my eyes opened in that moment.
yes,
And
sure.
so it's so easy. And I actually thanked her for that, because then I went to my mom and I said to my mom, "Have I been treating you the same way? Have I been like that towards you?" And so she could say, "Yeah, it's been a bit uncomfortable around here." And so I thought everything around me was the problem, but I was the problem.
Absolutely,
So I had to
absolutely.
take stock of where I was, bring a bit of balance back into my life, and just, you know. So
Yeah,
that's my story, and that really opened my eyes. And I have to say that that instant stuck with me, because it made sure that I checked my behavior and checked the atmosphere I was creating in the home. And we know with children, our moods, if we can't regulate emotionally, they're not going to be able to regulate
yes.
emotionally. And we create tension in the home, and it feeds their anxiety and their behavior. You know?
And there's no better place to have insight into our behavior than looking on a school playground. And
Mm,
you look at how children resolve conflict on the playground,
yeah.
and they mirror us. How else are they going to learn to resolve conflict? They learn it from us. And if you look on a playground, and I'm not talking about everybody has an off day and everybody has a day that they're not quite themselves, but if you were and watching children regularly on a playground and how they play, and you see how children repeat behavior that is not in their or their friends' best interest, you know that is what's happening at home and how they're learning to behave at home. The the concept, I call it parenting from a deficit. If we are empty, if our bowl of resources are empty, you know, parenting is probably the most important thing we'll do with our lives. We have to put another human being out in the world to be a productive person contributing to society. And we are so focused on this moment right now, what is happening right now, that we forget that we have to play the long game. This is not about today being hard. It is not about making it easier for today. It is about doing the best we can for our children for when they are adults. And if we are at a deficit, if we are in the negative, the first thing is we have no resources and we have no kindness and we have no love and no grace left for our family members, like you've just shared. But what happens is we also teach our children something in that, is that if we don't take care of ourselves, our children's not going to know how to take care of themselves either. And so it is so important for us to do a regular review of our parenting in terms of where we are. Am I parenting from a deficit? In the beginning, it's important to do this daily because you're not going to understand your behavior if you don't make this a mindful daily practice to sit and think. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but end of the day, spend 10, 15 minutes thinking about you as a parent in that day. If you work for a big corporation, you have regular performance reviews. But we don't have that for our children, and it's such an important job we do, you know. When I interview children, which I regularly have to do, it is amazing the review children give of their parents. It's very insightful. And one of the questions is give a word for your parent. And then the questions that go with it: what is something your parent does that you really like? What is something your parent does that you'd like to see more of? And then what is something your parent does that you wish they did less of? And so often that thing is, I wish they worked less.
Wow.
And that is where we pour all our energy in every day. I think we try and contain ourselves and try and almost behave so well at work that there is nothing left for this very important part of our lives, and that's our children at home. So by doing this review, this daily review of ourselves, we can pay attention to the day, but we have to do it without judgment. You know, it is not about judging ourselves. It is not about giving ourselves or putting ourselves down. It is about looking at ways I have done things that could hurt my children, and what can I do to then make it better. Dr. Seth Godin has this quote that says, busy does not equal important, and measured doesn't mean mattered. So we are so busy with everything else and not busy with ourselves and knowing what we are, where we're at. And so we really have to slow down and we have to become mindful. And then when we do that, our brain is an amazing organ that start forming brain paths that if you do this review regularly, every day, you will see that when you have a big emotion during the day, you will actually start seeing it. You will see, okay, I'm feeling this trigger, I'm feeling this emotion coming. So now I can actually start and say, hold on, let me take a moment. I'm going to get back to you and we can have this conversation, or we can continue this conversation in a moment.
And there's an element of dissociation in that, isn't it? Because when we're so busy with work and we're keeping ourselves busy all the time, often it's also a coping mechanism where we actually don't want to sit with ourselves and look at those things that we need to deal with, like working too much and being on our phones, or when we're supposed to be present with our kids, or trying to multitask between catching up on the phone, talking to your child that wants your attention. At the end of the day, you just want to relax. You just want to, get some air in your lungs. And it's like you multitasking all the time. And you never take that time to just sit down, because I think most of us now, it's like we look at what the norm in society is, and we fall for those traps. And when we fall for those traps, then we're not always available for our children, because it's work, it's giving the perfect this and the perfect that, and being the perfect mom, and putting them in all the activities and making sure they've got a well-rounded everything. Meanwhile, we can't breathe and they can't breathe. And so how does the healing come in all of that? So I like what you say about the mindfulness. I feel like at the end of every day, we should be, parent or not, taking stock of our day and taking stock of our lives and seeing, what did I do today? How can I improve on this? Where can I bring a little bit more balance into my life? Because I feel, especially with parenting, there's a balance issue that always needs to be addressed as well.
That is so incredibly true what you are saying there, Tammy. I did an exercise with a group of parents last week that came for our parenting training, and I said to them, let's open our phones and look at how much time we spend on our phones. So these days, whether it's Android or Apple, they all come with apps that measure how much time you spend on your phone and what apps you're spending it on. And this came about for me, why we should do this. So first of all, when the parents did this, you could see, everybody was shocked. They couldn't believe that in a day that so many of their hours was spending on a phone. And we do it so unconsciously. We so easily just grab our phone. I spoke to one of the moms. She said she doesn't even watch TV without having her phone in her hand, doing two things at the same time. And how can we be mindful if we constantly have a device in our hands? So how I started with that specifically is I had a look. One of my children's report came back, and there was a drop in their marks. And we talked, and I couldn't understand. It's not like there was something specific that happened. So what was going on? And I just thought, let me just have a look at screen time. My children are bigger, so it's, they have their own cell phones, they're busy during the day. It's not measured as much as I did when they were little. And boy, was I surprised. And I was, needless to say, I was quite upset. But something said, that little voice, the Holy Spirit, first take a look at yourself. And I thought, let me compare this to what, I'm doing. And I was so shocked to see how many hours of my day is spent on my phone. And, the technology is supposed to help us, but we don't make use of the tools that are really there to help us. So what I was able to do is I was able to put a limit for myself, because I have no self-control, especially when it comes to something like Facebook.
I
I
also
have
have
put a
a limit.
limit
I also have a limit.
on my phone that I can only spend a half an hour a day on Facebook. And if it times out, it grays the app out and I can't access Facebook. Of course, there's overrides, but luckily in that regard, I have enough self-control not to, go back and override that. But through that and showing my children, I'm also just human. I can also fall into the addictive trap of my phone. And through that, I've also started a practice that when my children start speaking to me, I close my laptop or I put my phone down. The change it has made in our relationship. The times they come to actually speak to me more now than they did in the past. The things I know now about them, because I am present when they are speaking to me. My device is down. My laptop is closed. I am looking at them while they're speaking to me.
It's so important.
And it's so important because it means, what am I saying to them if I'm on my phone writing my WhatsApp or doing while they're talking? Is you not important enough? But by putting the device down and looking at them and looking them in their eyes, I'm also setting an example for them in how we communicate with each other. But at the same time, the difference it makes in our relationships is really important.
And that's the concept of attunement, isn't it? Because if you think about
Yes.
babies, that's how they learn as well, is having a parent that's tuned to them. They learn from our faces, from our eyes, from when we look at them, they can tell, are we angry, are we happy, are we sad? That's how they learn those very early emotions as well. And then that's also how they learn to respond to us. So if your face is down and your kid's talking to you, or you're busy on your phone and they're pulling, especially little ones, the message you're giving them is, I'm not interested, or I don't have the time for you right now. So that attunement is so, so important. I mean, even for us as adults, right? If we're having a conversation with somebody, it irks me when I'm talking to somebody and they're not looking at me and they're scrolling through their phone. My daughter and I have a joke about doom scrolling, because you see people, they just scroll, paying no attention to what's going on around them, even when you're having a conversation. So now you've got a child that's experiencing that same thing from you. It's so, so harmful to them.
Tammy, I have a little bit, not a little bit, a little bit of a lot of ADHD. So I am very scatterbrained. And I've had to use my phone. I've realized that I'm unable to concentrate on a conversation if I don't have my phone and busy doing something else as well. And that became alarming to me, because I wasn't always like this. I didn't always have a device. What is happening here? And even then, I have some friends that understood that about me, but I have some friends that don't. That they find it very disrespectful. So I had to really understand what is happening. Why is it that I have to do this all of a sudden? It's not something I've always had. And if you look at the ADHD mind, if you have a child with ADHD and devices, it is one of the worst things you could do. And by starting to just put my device away more often, turning it around, putting it in a drawer while I'm working, for example, to start with. Those moments when I go and have tea and have those tech-free 10, 15 minutes and sit somewhere else away from my device and having a cup of tea. I no longer have to do that. I can now have a conversation with someone, be fully present in the conversation. But I had to will myself to do that.
You just kind of recondition yourself, hey?
Recondition, yes.
Mm.
And there are more ways we can become more conscious in and more mindful in our daily lives. The tech-free time is, I think, one of the most important things and one of the places we can start. But we must become a bit more intentional with our lives. And something that can really set you up for great success is mindful mornings and nighttime rituals, I call it. So by waking up 15 minutes earlier and just having that mindfulness of not just waking up and jumping and giving your body a fright in the morning and rushing and shouting at everybody to wake everybody up and come, we have to go. We send our kids off in the day to start school, but with such a rush, get into the car, we're going to be late for school. And if we wake up 15 minutes earlier, and just by calming ourselves down, having that moment, knowing that, okay, here's what we have to do now. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's how my body is feeling right now, because that's another topic I'm sure that you'll get to, is we no longer in tune with our bodies either. Right. We forget that we're a whole person, we're a body, mind, and spirit, and we often forget that body part. But if we just slow down and we say good morning to ourselves, and how am I feeling today? And just do a body scan of where am I feeling the niggles, and especially as we get older, they seem to be a bit more of them. And then it just sets you up for the day. It just, you're able to go and wake your children up in less of a hurried way, let's rush. Able to have a good morning, able to have that that lovingness, that intentionality of our parenting, starting our children's day with good morning. And then the bedtime ritual, the nighttime ritual, again, such a wonderful time to be able to connect with our children. It's to have, as they get older, my children actually go to bed later than I do in the evenings, because they have lots of schoolwork and studying and all of that. But checking in with them, having that ritual of, do you need a cup of coffee or do you need a cup of tea? How's it going? What are you working on? And that also teaches your body. We have this ritual, so your body is also preparing. So as you walk through the house, saying goodnight to everybody, switching the lights off, for example, it's a ritual that your body then starts to realize we are mindful about the fact that we are going to bed now. And it also just brings us down. Instead of just walking with a device, or just rushing through thinking all the things that have to happen tomorrow, and I have to go to bed now, and is everything done, and what did I not do today? Just slowing our minds down in that moment of, we are going to bed now.
And also
we
for
are getting ourselves
right, that those nighttime rituals are so important for them, to take the time before they go to bed to read them a story, or to pray with them, or to just spend that time. I remember when my daughter was probably about 7, and I was teaching at that time, and I remember I had the whole pile of books to mark. I was tired and I wanted to go to bed, and I'd read her a story and I'd prayed with her, and she kind of put her arms around me when I wanted to go, and she was like, no, don't go, stay with me. And she was holding on, and I started to feel this irritation. I'm like, I've got so much to do. And I remember taking her arms off from me and kissing and saying, Mommy's got to go, I've got work to do. And, just understanding that she must have felt so disappointed, and I remember years later when I went through my own healing journey with things, how that memory came back for me, and I had to forgive myself because it would plague me. Like, why couldn't I just give her that extra 10 minutes? Why was that not possible? Yes. And so I think that is something we need to remember, because they get big so quickly. And those are the moments we can never get back with them. So creating those rituals, and like you say, if your body gets on board and your body knows for 20 minutes, I'm going to be calm and I'm just going to be with my child. I'm going to spend this time with him.
Yes.
And when you're done, you can go and do what you need to do. That is so important to kids growing up, especially the little ones. Because if you've had a really busy day, you might not have had time to spend with them. That might be the only 20 minutes, 10 minutes that you get quality time to just be with them, and be present with them.
And how often in those moments do we not get the most important nuggets of gold from them in what's happening in their internal world and what's happened at school? Because sometimes they need that afternoon just to process something has happened. And I have found specifically with one of my kids that those evenings, evening rituals, or that time at night is when I get most from him in what's happened with him and where he's at and what he's feeling. Is in those little bits that we have. But of course, as children are, and again, something we've just briefly talked about earlier is boundaries. So, children love to exploit our weak spots.
That's right.
And now we start with this wonderful intention, of creating this evening ritual and bedtime ritual. But just one more story.
Yes.
Just one more story.
Yes.
So it is at the same time important for them to also understand where the boundaries are of what we're doing.
And to communicate that to them so they understand.
Communicate with them, yes. So here's our ritual. It involves one story. It does not involve 100 cups of water before you go to bed.
Yes.
This is our time, and this is what I am able to give right now. But then, it is over. And it is it's important that there's a beginning and an end to our ritual. So it's not just this endless loop that we're going to go through, because they love grabbing the hand when we're offering the little finger.
But that's why, even for kids, we have to communicate those boundaries to them, because they don't automatically understand why that boundary is there. And then we have to obviously consistently reinforce that as well, so that they understand.
Yes, and it's not about some children, they will push that boundary over and over. They will ask every night, but another story. And you're going to have to remind them every night. A wonderful thing that I learned about boundaries is that it's my responsibility to enforce my boundary. It is not my child or my partner or my friend's responsibility to remember what my boundaries are. It's my responsibility to say no. We said one story, I'm going to bed now, or I have to go do X, Y, Z now.
That's right. That's right. So you've brought up some really nice points today with regards to just being more conscious. So today we discussed the concept of conscious parenting to sort of bring like an introduction to, because we're going to do a 4-part series. So today was kind of the introduction. So we spoke about being tech free, or being more intentional to spend time with our kids. So it's tech free time, more intentional. It's having that mindfulness, which I would also say is if you're able to get up a bit early in the morning and start your day with God in that mindfulness, because I feel like for me, if my day goes and I haven't spent time with God, inevitably somewhere along the way in that day, my day's messed up. So it's as parents also to have that time with God, if we are able to, although I know our schedules are very rushed, but it's also so important, right?
Absolutely, Tammy. I know some parents like to do or their morning time with God after they've dropped their children off. But even in preparing ourselves for our time with God, you know, we have to just slow down for a minute. Because how often have I not done my morning devotions and just rush through it?
Yes.
Because it's a tick box.
You've got to get through it. You've got to get through it because the next thing
I've got to get through it because it's one of the things I have to do. And you know, it's again a wonderful place where we can become more conscious and more intentional about what we're doing. And how do we do that? Is by just slowing down and stopping and be present in knowing what is it that I'm actually going to do now? Where am I at? You know, it's all good and well. I'm busy reading through Psalms, you know, and say, okay, it's another. I've done another Psalm. I've done another Psalm. But where am I at before I start reading this?
Or you read it in your mind somewhere else, and you've got to reread and reread because you paid absolutely no attention to what you were reading.
Exactly. So even in our time with God or before our time with God, you know, is it something we're just rushing in and saying, "Hi, God, I was here," or am I slowing down and being intentional? Am I putting my device down when I speak to God? Same with our relationships with our children. We as children going to our Father, we also need to be intentional in that relationship.
Yeah, very, very good point that. And you know, mindfulness is so important because I remember when we were studying and we first learned about the concept of mindfulness in positive psychology, they kind of drew a little diagram in the textbook that was mindfulness versus mindfulness, where you've got all these things going on in your mind of everything you need to do today. So your mind is full versus mind just being calm and you thinking about where you're at and you know, the healthy calm. So it's spelled the same, doesn't mean the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that quote we had earlier of Dr. Seth Godin. Busy does not equal important.
Yeah, exactly.
Measured doesn't mean mattered. Absolutely.
So also we've got the tech and we've got the intentionality and we've got the mindfulness and then we've got the nighttime rituals that are so important. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, gratitude.
I love that one.
Yes, and you know, talking about psychology, the research that has been done in the change in the brain, the positive changes in the brain by practicing gratitude is phenomenal. So when I first got introduced, also in positive psychology, to the practice of gratitude, I thought, well, I wrote a paper on it, and I thought, okay, well, let me practice what I preach. So everything I say to the parents that I work with, I always do try and implement first. And a friend, I got a gratitude buddy, my dear friend, and our practice was by sending each other every night 5 things that we are grateful for.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
And it was an experiment, and we did it for 3 months. And it was amazing to see how much that helps you to be more present. Because now, I don't just want to say to her every night, oh, I'm grateful for my husband and my kids and the food I had to eat. It meant that I was looking for those moments during the day to be grateful for, so that I could share that with her in the evening.
So it's not just the same things all the time, hey? Because I've also got a practice like that. Like I like to write down 3 things that I'm thankful for. And I sometimes find that I tend to want to go to the same things all the time. And I'm thinking, no, I was thankful for that yesterday. What is something else that you can really be thankful for, or have gratitude for in your day? And it's important to actually take that time to think about it.
Yes. So it was really it was a very, very good and fruitful exercise, and we both could see the benefit, and that we had and that we got out of it. And I think especially in the beginning, and it's such a great thing to share with your children. In the evening when you at the dinner table, and it doesn't have to be that big. We've forced it a bit by saying 5 things, but it was an experiment, but just saying, what are you grateful for today? What was amazing today? And sometimes the kids just, I'm thankful for the food, and especially when they're teens, they really are thankful for their food. But it's beautiful when they become more intentional about it. They know, especially the little ones, they know that question's coming. And they also start looking for the things that they can be grateful for during the day.
Oh, that's awesome. And something else that stood out for me is I did a workshop on imago therapy, and imago in Latin means vision or image, and it's your image of love. So imago is also very much based upon the attachment styles and how we respond to others, based on our attachment. And one of the exercises was the appreciation exercise, is to have that dinner time ritual, include your children, and to tell each one what you appreciate about them.
Yes.
And I remember doing a little appreciation exercise about 3 or 4 years ago, where for 40 days I would tell my husband every day what I appreciate about him. And it was just sort of it was something I was doing. I can't even remember what I was doing. And I thought, wow, this sounds like a challenge, but I'm going to go for it. And I really had to sit and think about what do I appreciate about you? And it forces us to look at the qualities in our children, or in our spouse that we really appreciate. And we know for kids, they thrive more on us telling them what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong, right? And that sort of breeds a confidence in them as well.
Such a good point, Tammy. And to see their little faces when you tell them, or even when they're big, it sometimes, I must say, I don't do that enough with my kids. But when I do, now that you mention it, it sometimes for them so unexpectedly, and like, wow, thank you. It's and and we all want to be appreciated, don't we? And we so easily again focus so much inward and just but if the moment we start sharing with others and saying, I really appreciate this, what you're doing, I'm grateful for you when you do X, Y, or Z, and just seeing how much that means to someone, it it's it's a wonderful thing, and it's a gift. It really is a gift we can give our children.
And what's also, as you're talking, what comes up for me, there's a generosity in that. Like, we're being generous with our words, we're being generous with our heart towards other people, in actually just expressing that instead of keeping it inside all the time. And another thing that came to mind is, as parents, because our children are always watching us, and they learn vicariously, they observationally looking what we're doing. If we as parents can also just be more generous with our partner in the presence of our children, so that our children can hear us express, wow, I appreciate you, you're such a good person, or thank you for doing this today, or just I love you, or you look beautiful, or you look handsome, whatever it is it's seeing that their parents are generous with each other, that they're thankful for each other, that they love each other, because you are the only template really for marriage at that point. So whatever they are seeing happen in the home, that's going to be their template, and that makes it hard if that template's broken and they don't really know what that looks like,
Yeah, and also, learning how to say, I appreciate you. And again, they learn through us, they learn through the way we do things. And, if we do all of these studies and learning about, gratitude and appreciation and how good it is for relationships, how must our children learn? It's if they don't see us doing it or they don't hear it from us, they learn to be in the world from watching us. And that's what they do when they are little. They're constantly watching us. And then when they are teens, that's when they start figuring out, but who am I in this world? Is this something that is part of me, that I've seen around me, or is this not something I want to take with me? And if they don't have enough good things to take with them, the world is a very scary place that they're going into.
Yeah, because we're also part of building those internal resources inside of them that they're going to need for life. I remember the concept of vulnerability versus resilience when I was studying. That also really stood out for me. It's some kids are more resilient and some kids are more vulnerable, and that is really based on not their parents' trauma. And I think our next talk we're going to talk about parenting deficits and that. So I don't want to dean, but a lot of that resilience and vulnerability is tied to their parenting. What do the parents bring into the marriage and then bring into their parenting? And so if the parents come in with good internal resources, some of those are going to be transferred. Maybe there's weaknesses in some areas, because we know our kids get sometimes the good and the bad from us, the best and the stuff that needs to be worked on. But I think if we can just start to really pay attention to that we build very good internal resources into our children, so that when they leave the home, because, we're creating the next generation's husband, wife, employer, employee, and that's we need to think, like you were saying in the beginning, we need to think long term like that. This is going to be somebody's wife or somebody's husband, or I'm going to have to work for this person, and am I going to want to work for this person?
Yes.
And a lot of that is, it's prayer. Like, I don't believe any parent can parent success without the Holy Spirit and without prayer. But it's also up to us to actually be part of that process, to help them in those areas.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If we just go back to that that process, and it is something that we'll talk about in another episode, but if we keep in mind, that we have to send this person into the world, like you're saying now, and it is someone's husband, or it is someone's wife, or it is someone's boss. Who is it that we want to send into the world? Do we know who it is that we want to send into the world? And again, we have to be mindful and careful not to force ourselves on our children. So it is important that we do this mindfully, carefully, and having thought it through, that we don't put them in a box and this is how you're going to be, but with that gentleness, gently guide them onto this journey, and a long-term journey for where they're heading.
So maybe in closing, what I would just like to leave is something really valid that you've brought up is, we enter parenting sometimes. I'm so excited to be a parent, but we don't enter it intentionally. Like you're saying, I must think about God's design for this child. That's the first thing that's very important. Ask God, what is his design for that child? Don't nurture the child the way I want the child to be nurtured, but nurture the child the way God wants the child to be nurtured. And then what do I want to install? What are the qualities I want to see come forward in this child that's going to make for an awesome adult? Yes. And, I know we can't do all of that work, but we can do quite a bit of that work if we instill the right things. So it's parenting with intentionality really ties in very nicely with the whole conscious parenting, being conscious of what do we want to see come forward in our children.
Someone sent a quote to me once about God, who made all of the earth and all the creatures, thought it important enough to have one of you in the world. And it's just one of you. And we have to remember that that is true for our children as well. He has made each of our children so unique. It would be wonderful if he sent each of them with a little handbook, But, like you said earlier, we do have the Holy Spirit to guide us. But are we intentional in our praying, for guidance? Are we intentional about asking the Holy Spirit to be with us on our parenting journey? I think praying for our children when we have our nightly family when we read the Bible together and we spend time together with God, I'm just thinking now out loud, am I just praying for them for the sake of what's happening this week and what they have on their plates? Or am I mindful to what the Holy Spirit is really saying about each of my children? And I think that is also something really important in conscious parenting to consider.
Yeah, and to just bless their spirit. So something I do even now with, my adults, kids when I pray, and the grandchildren is I bless their spirit. I just say, Lord, I bless their spirit with this, the things that I'd like to see come forward. I bless their spirit with destiny and purpose. I bless their spirit with your design. I bless their spirit with the resources in their lives that they need to be who you created them to be. I bless them with the people to come into their lives, and we just think about all those things that they're going to need for their purpose and their calling. And we bless them with that, because it's
Yes.
received in the spirit, and the spirit will translate that to the soul and the body. And you'll start to see the fruit of that, like starting to bless your child in the womb already with the things that you want to see come forward in the child. It's so important,
Absolutely.
So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. But Isolet, is there anything you'd just like to leave before we close? I know there's so much we could talk about, but so I really look forward to our next one. But if there's anything you'd like to leave as we close.
Yeah, I think just the concept of what it means, what is conscious parenting. So that's what today was about, is introducing this topic. So to emphasize, that it is about self-awareness, that it is about mindfulness, and it is about understanding our own triggers and behaviors. So that we are able to respond to our children's needs with the empathy and the compassion that they need. So really important is, first of all, start with ourselves in understanding our triggers and behaviors, be mindful and self-aware, so that we can then go forward in our journey of parenting.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to drop those tips in the box with the video, just to give them a taster of what's coming. But thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love having these talks, and I haven't done a lot of parenting talks, so I'm really looking forward to our journey ahead as well.
Yes, thank you, Tammy, and it is wonderful chatting with you. I love spending time with you.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. I'm sure this blessed you, and stay tuned for the next one.